You're listening to Full Circle Weekly News. These articles are compiled by Eric Bionretti, and I'm your host, Moss Bliss. This is episode 362, covering week 15, April 8th to 14th, 2024. Kent Overstreet offered patches to Bcachefs that allow the Linux kernel to work with Bcachefs even after damage to a significant amount of metadata, rebuilding spoiled B-trees on metadata from inode and dirent structures. The changes were adopted by Linus Torvalds for inclusion in the test update of the 6.9-RC3 core kernel. The changes provide mounts of damaged file systems and provide access to all or almost all data in the file system affected by the recent error that led to the deconstruction of the file system. The error occurred when, after the update, the toolkit initialized but did not end an attempt to update the structures of the file system, after which the core with the old implementation of Bcachefs made an attempt to downgrade the version of the structures, ignoring the unfinished update. The situation led to the infamous split brain mode when none of the operations can be completed, and the structure of B-tree-fs are no longer consistent with the real contents. This patch allows you to continue working even in such cases. The new STO 2.4 symbolic link management system has been presented using symbolic links to separate directories from the contents of programs and related data. STO may be useful for installing and integrating programs installed from source code or for managing configuration files. The code is written in Perl and distributed under the GPL v3 license. STO uses a simple approach to the placement of applications. All the components associated with the program are installed by the standard tools in a separate directory in the user local STO directory. STO's task is to set up symbolic links to the hierarchy of system directories user local and the control of their integrity. When the package is deleted, all associated symbolic links are also deleted inside the user local STO directory. The files of the installed programs always remain unchanged, and STO operates only with symbolic links. In addition to managing system packages, it is possible to manage programs and configuration files in the user's home directory. The Pumpkin OS project attempts to recreate the Palm OS operating system used in Palm communicators. Pumpkin OS allows you to directly run applications created for Palm OS without the use of an emulator and without requiring the original Palm OS firmware. Applications built for the M68K architecture can run on systems with x86 and ARM processors. The project code is written in C and is licensed GPL v3. The environment for running applications works in Linux and Windows, but it can also be built as its own downloadable OS. The system environment is based on the Linux kernel and the BusyBox package. A graphic shell is provided to navigate the available applications and switch between them. The delivery includes 4 basic applications: the code transferred from the Palm OS SDK, the address book, the to-do note queue system, the MemoPad text editor, and calendar. The release of the apt-mirror 2 4 toolkit has been published, designed to create local mirrors of apt repositories of distributions based on Debian and Ubuntu. apt-mirror 2 can be used as a transparent replacement instead of the apt-mirror utility, which has not been updated since 2017. The main difference in apt-mirror 2 is the use of the Python language with the async.io library rather than Perl, as well as the use of integrity checks at all stages of the mirror to prevent a mirror failure. The code is distributed under the GPL v3 license. The developer of the PyVPN tool announced the publication of the final version, 4.6. After the release of the repositories, it was transferred to archive mode, and the author announced the complete termination of support for the project. A loss of interest in development is mentioned. The project has fulfilled its mission and has lost relevance in modern realities, as other tools to solve the problem are seen as being better. The developer also stated that he does not intend to transfer the rights to those wishing to pick up the development due to the lack of credible candidates and the feeling that he has no right to decide to whom to transfer the project. Those wishing to continue the development of PyVPN can create a fork and develop it under a different name. Cloudflare has published the first release of the Pingora framework, designed to develop secure high-performance network services in the Rust language. A proxy was used for about a year in the Content Delivery Network instead of Nginx, and processed more than 40 million requests per second built with Pingora. The code is written in Rust and is published under the Apache 2.0 license. The Fedora Engineering Steering Committee approved the default use of the DNF5 package manager in the autumn release of Fedora 41. The DNF, libDNF, and DNF-Cutomatic packages will be replaced in Fedora 41 with the DNF5 toolkit and the new libDNF5 library, and the symbolic link user bind DNF will point to the DNF5 executable. The functionality associated with managing the transaction history underlying the DNF history command is not yet available. Also, work has not yet been completed to integrate support for the DNF5 daemon background process in GNOME Software Application Manager. The Rivendell 4.2 project is out, which develops a digital sound processing platform which can be used to automate the work of multimedia studios and professional radio broadcast stations. Rivendell includes a set of components that solve tasks such as ether grid planning, ordering and rotation of compositions, automatic inclusion of voice, export of data for the announcement of the current composition and the announcement of the next one, bundles. The code is written in C++ and is distributed under GPL v2 and LGPL v2 licenses. NXS-Backup 3.4.0 to create backups, rotate them, and store them on local or external storages is out. In addition to backup of files, it can also create backups of various DBMSs. The project code is distributed on the GPL v3 license. The project code is completely rewritten in Go rather than Python to improve performance and functionality. OpenSSL 3.3.0 library with the SSL/TLS protocols and various encryption algorithms was released. Support for OpenSSL 3.3 will be available until April 2026. Support for the past OpenSSL 3.2, 3.1, and 3.0 LTS will last until November 2025, March 2025, and September 2026, respectively. The project code is distributed under the Apache 2.0 license. The results of the competition among graphic designers to update the elements of branding of the Kubuntu distribution have been tabulated. An attempt was made to get a recognizable and modern design reflecting the specifics of Kubuntu, positively perceived by beginners and older users, and harmoniously combined with the style of KDE and Ubuntu. As a result of the competition, recommendations were made for the modernization of the project logo, desktop screensaver, color palette, and fonts. They also published vector files with the new logo, proposed in various colors. The implementation of these elements will happen in the Kubuntu 24.04 release. Anonymous Network I2P 2.5.0 and C++ client I2PD 2.51.0 was released. I2P is a multi-layered anonymous distributed network running on top of the conventional internet, actively using end-to-end encryption that guarantees anonymity and isolation. The network is built in P2P mode and is formed thanks to the resources provided by network users, which allows you to do without the use of centrally managed servers. On the I2P network, you can anonymously create websites and blogs, send instant messages and emails, share files, and organize P2P networks. For the construction and use of anonymous networks for client-server and P2P applications, I2P clients are used. The basic I2P client is written in Java and can run on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Solaris, and others. I2PD is an independent implementation of the I2P client in the C++ language and is distributed under a modified BSD license. The developers of the Gentoo distribution announced the transition to the patronage of the nonprofit organization SPI, Software in the Public Interest, delegating solutions to non-technical tasks which will allow them to do without Gentoo's legal entity, get rid of the administrative routine, and increase the attractiveness for the transfer of donations by commercial companies, since such donations will allow a tax deduction in the United States. Among other things, SPI will supervise the admission of donations, resolve legal issues, manage assets and trademarks, ensure the storage of the project, pay costs, conclude contracts, conduct audits, and maintain accounting. There are 44 other open projects under the auspices of SPI, including Debian, Arch Linux, LibreOffice, X.org, Systemd, PostgreSQL, FFmpeg, FreeDesktop.org, OpenWRT, OpenZFS, Jenkins, and OpenEmbedded. The 1.0 release of OpenZT Toolkit, which allows you to integrate tools for distributed network interaction and access services in an isolated network environment, has been released. OpenZT makes it possible to deploy a specialized network for developed applications, running on top of the usual internet and using mesh routing. At each point of the network is connected through neighboring points. The project code is written in Go and distributed under the Apache 2.0 license. APIs are provided for the languages C, Go, Python, Swift, Java, Node.js, and C#.net, as well as tools for integration with applications for the Android platform. The OpenZT system is designed to build networks that guarantee the protection and isolation of traffic in unprotected environments or nodes which can be compromised. It can be used to communicate with applications instead of a VPN. The operation of the network is provided through the use of the controller process, which manages the configuration of the network, authentication, and configuration of services, as well as nodes that are allowed to act as routers, forming a mesh network and perform transit traffic transfer through themselves. You can add services to balance the load and ensure fault tolerance. The Open Invention Network and Unified Patents announced the successful development of the Open Source Zone, begun in 2019 following the patent aggression of the Rothschild Patent Imaging Company against the GNOME project. Since then, in addition to the patent that the GNOME developers were accused of violating, OS Zone participants were able to have 53 more patents invalidated aimed at open source software. An experimental release of dtrace 2.0.0-1.14 Dynamic Debugging Toolkit for Linux is out, implemented as a user space process that uses the eBPF subsystem and the standard tracing mechanisms provided by the Linux kernel. The eBPF-based dtrace implementation is close to the functionality of the first dtrace implementation for Linux, implemented in the form of a kernel module. The project code is distributed under the GPL v2 license. The toolkit can be used with stock Linux kernels that support BPF. To use it, you need the libctf library with support for the CTF compact type format debug format, which is included in the binutils package starting with release 2.40, or the libdtrace CTF library ported from Solaris. Optionally, 2 patches are offered for the 6.7 kernel, which allow you to use advanced features to obtain additional data about the modules and the kernel. Ardour 8.5 has been published, designed for multi-channel recording, processing, and mixing of sound. Ardour provides a multi-track timeline and unlimited level of rollback of changes throughout the entire process of working with a file, even after closing the program, along with support for a variety of hardware interfaces. The program is positioned as a free analog of professional tools, Pro Tools, Nuendo, Pyramix, and Sequoia. The code is distributed under the GPL v2 license. Unofficial builds for Linux will soon be generated in Flatpak format. Ubuntu 24.04 Noble Numbat beta distribution was presented, after which formation the package database was completely frozen and the developers moved on to final testing and bug fixes. The release is scheduled for April 24th. The 24.04 branch is classified as a long-term support release, and updates will be generated for 12 years. 5 years is generally available, plus another 7 years for uses as the Ubuntu Pro service. Ready-made test images are created for Ubuntu, Ubuntu Server, Lubuntu, Kubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu Budgie, Ubuntu Studio, Xubuntu, Ubuntu Chillin, Ubuntu Unity, Edubuntu, and Ubuntu Cinnamon. KDE Framework 6.1.0 platform was published, providing a restructured and ported basic set of libraries and runtime components to Qt6. The framework includes 72 libraries, some of which can work as self-contained add-ons to Qt, and some of which form the KDE software stack. The release follows an initiative to deliver predictable monthly updates to the KDE frameworks. Laka 5.0 is out, which allows you to turn computers, TV consoles, or single-board computers into full-fledged game consoles for the launch of retro games. The project is a modification of the LibreElect distribution originally designed to create home theaters. Laka builds are for i386, x86-64 platforms, Raspberry Pi, Orange Pi, Banana Pi, Hummingbird, Qbox i, Odroid C1, C1+, XU3, XU4, etc. To install, simply write the distribution to an SD card or USB drive, connect the gamepad, and boot to the system. Laka is based on the RetroArch emulator, providing emulation of a wide range of devices and supporting advanced capabilities such as multiplayer games, save states, improving the image quality of old games with shaders, rewinding the game back, hot connection of gamepads, and video streaming. For a list of consoles and gamepads supported, check the link in the show notes. Lutris 0.5.17 has been published, which provides tools to simplify the installation, configuration, and management of games in Linux. The project code is written in Python and distributed on the GPL v3 license. Ready-made builds are available as Flatpaks. The project supports a directory for quick search and installation of games, allowing you to run Linux games through a single interface with a single click without worrying about installing dependencies and settings. Runtime components for launching games are supplied by the project and are not linked to the distribution used. The runtime is a distribution-based library suite that includes components from SteamOS and Ubuntu, as well as various additional libraries. It is possible to install games distributed through GOG, Steam, Epic Games Store, Battle.net, Amazon Games, Origin, and Uplay services. For commercial games, the user must independently purchase the game in the corresponding service. You've been listening to Full Circle Weekly News. For more details, see the next issue of the magazine at fullcirclemagazine.org or check the links in the show notes. You can contact me at bardmoss@pm.me. I'll see you next week.